On this week's mailbag episode, wow, what a weekend, what a 4-day stretch. The dastardly Dodgers of Los Angeles get Roki Sasaki, what it means for the Padres going forward, as well as their signings of Tanner Scott and most recently Kirby Yates. Talking about all the discourse about whether or not this is good for the game, giving my thoughts on that. Was there tampering involved, all sorts of stuff, and of course, answer your guys' questions and more. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Padres podcast, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for Tuesday, January 21st. As always, I'm your host with sometimes, occasionally, but certainly not always the most, Javier Reyes. You can find me on Twitter /X and Blue Sky at Javipeno, JAVIIPENO. And if you want other baseball related work from your boy, go check out Just Baseball, where I'm going to be writing a little bit more about the Roki Sasaki signing and what it means for the Padres missing out on him. So I'm going to talk about that there. Today we're just reacting to the signing a little bit more on today's podcast, so you can check that out when it drops, and also go check out the newsletter, which I help edit as well and occasionally write the whole thing, and just a really good newsletter over at Just Baseball that we're working on to just kind of give you all the immediate info whenever the big news breaks. So go subscribe to that. It's very good. Today's episode, guys, let me tell you, it's gonna be a sad one. It's going to be a dour one. Will it be filled with some rants? Oh, absolutely. You guys know who you're listening to. Come on now. We're going to be doing that. We're going to be talking about Roki and all these things because I have so many thoughts for what I think is, frankly, there are aspects of this that I think are very nuanced and complicated, and then there are aspects that I don't think are very complicated, right? So it's going to be really fun to talk about this, and I'm sure the flood of Dodger comments that I usually almost always get, like 95% of the time, that are going to flood this video will be very rational and cool. So to you there, sipping your coffee in your Dodgers mug or whatever, this one goes for you, homie. But today's episode, guys, is brought to you, firstly, by FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, let's get started with this. Here we go. Oh boy. So it's no secret that a lot of this offseason, I think that the biggest storylines were Juan Soto and then Roki Sasaki, right? Juan Soto, I think with him, it was very clear that was a little bit of a big market thing, right? Like, who was going to get him? The Dodgers reportedly were interested at one point, and it was clear that Steve Cohen was like, baby, I'm making it rain. I don't care what it costs, but we're getting Juan Soto. And they did that. And then the other one was Roki Sasaki, and that one was, in theory, actually a little bit more interesting because Roki Sasaki, because of the rules that I imagine people who are listening to this podcast are familiar with, but I'll say them again anyway, because of his age, at age 23, he's technically treated by Major League Baseball as an amateur, so therefore, this isn't a, let's say, Yoshinobu Yamamoto situation where it's just biggest bidder wins, right? So that was what was really fun. And then you had these whole sweepstakes and all these different teams were involved. They were making calls from the White Sox to the Dodgers to the Padres to the Giants, whoever it was, right? And I think that created this long process, I think, and it created this thing where everybody was really excited about basically who I think, and from people that I talk about that, I think the way you view Roki Sasaki is essentially a slight differentiation of this, but imagine those top 100 prospect lists that people do who follow the minor leagues and all that stuff, that Roki would be like the number one prospect in baseball, basically, if you treat it like that, and just pretend that he's signing a minor league deal with the Dodgers and he's being called up to begin this season, right? This upcoming season. I think that's the way to view it, basically. And there's a bunch of reasons for that. I highly recommend everyone go check out Just Baseball, again, company man over here, video that Aram Layton did describing Roki Sasaki, the potential issues even with him. So I recommend everybody go check that out as well. Let's just get into it, right? So my first reaction was obviously very upset, right? This stinks. And I think that one of the things that's happening in baseball, though, is there's a lot of discourse, and I got a lot of comments and questions about this too, just about whether or not this is good for the sport, right? And whether or not it's fair that the Dodgers have all of this. And I think it's complicated. And I will say that, like, when it comes to Dodger fans in my life, I think most are just kind of like every fan base where just the online crusade is really toxic and annoying to deal with. And we will be reading some of those a little bit later. But I think that with this, let's do the uncomplicated part of this first. The uncomplicated part of this is quite simple, which is that teams that are already winning and doing well, or at least just they're at the top of the game, and especially in baseball, which is a sport in a league that, one of the problems we're always talking about is how the same stars go to the same like 5 places and other teams don't have a chance. Now, the non-complicated part of that is that's bad. In a vacuum, that's bad. It's not fun when we watch in college football that Alabama, or last night, congratulations, Ohio State wins the national championship or whatever, for sure. But I also think that there's something serious to be said about just producing excitement, right? Producing the engagement. Being like, wow, off season's happening and just all these teams are going to have new players. And it kind of sucks that when you're part of a team with ownership, and this is the key part, that doesn't want to spend, your biggest get is going to be like Donovan Solano, who I like, by the way, and shouts to the Mariners. I think it's a good get for them. But like, this is the problem with the league, is that a team like the Mariners, which is quite good and very talented, they go out and do barely anything, and they sign Donovan Solano, while the Dodgers go out and get a lot of players that they frankly don't even need. I don't think they needed Roki Sasaki. They have like 9 pitchers in that rotation, including Dustin May and Bobby Miller and Tony Gonsolin, that could like fill out the end of their rotation. On top of, which is kind of wild, by the way, that like I almost forgot this, that like they also signed Blake Snell, and then they of course have Yamamoto, they have Otani coming back to pitch, they have Tyler Glass now. It's just one of those situations where I think when it comes to making the game more fun and all-encompassing, and being like, you know what would be really sick if the Reds went out and signed Roki Sasaki? You know what would be really sick if the Blue Jays got Blake Snell, whatever. I'm just saying team names now. But instead, we're in this situation where I think what I tweeted and basically how I feel it is, this is a little bit of a broken league. And it's not exclusive to the Dodgers because, you could go back and point to the Yankees. I will say the assertion that I've heard from Dodger fans, which is like, they haven't always done this, they've built, is partially true. Right? Like some of their best players, from Clayton Kershaw to, let's say at the time, Corey Seager, Max Muncy's a pretty good player, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, there's a lot of building part of this, but over the past few seasons, they have entered another level of spending. And for 6 years straight, I do not think it's good for a league. And frankly, I don't think it's just fun. Let's just talk about fun. What is fun about the same team getting the top free agent or trade deadline target ranging back to 2018, I should probably say, right? You can even say when they traded for Manny Machado, like that was the best player, I think, available at the deadline this year. And then of course, Mookie Betts. Then what happens next offseason? Freddie Freeman. What happens next offseason? You get Trevor Bauer, who was the top pitcher at the time. Of course, bigger story with him, we would find out later, obviously, but that was the biggest pitcher on the market. Then you get Freddie Freeman. Then you get Yoshinobu Yamamoto. Then you get Shohei Ohtani. Then you get, at the trade deadline, Max Scherzer and Trey Turner, right? There's just this, I don't think it's good for the league. I really don't. In the just context of it, right? Like, guess what's not fun? It's not that they're doing anything that is illegal. It's not like they necessarily have a not sizable. It's not necessarily that other teams couldn't do it, but guess what? You know why people hate the Chiefs? Because they're winning all the time, and it's really annoying. And not to mention the calls. It's just not fun. And I just wish that, I'm excited to see how Roki Sasaki does. I'm always excited about individual players, but I do not believe, and forgive me, unbiased Dodger fans that will comment about this, I do not believe that if you're just a baseball fan, it's interesting seeing the best team continue to be the best always and to continue to profit off of that. And I think that it's just from a story perspective. Like, am I interested in Roki? Absolutely. Am I interested in to see how the Dodgers do? No. And I think you're lying if you think that it's going to be interesting to be like, I want to see what this team looks like. Yeah, we're going to watch like 2 months of baseball and they're going to be awesome. And I'm going to be like, yeah, they're good. Well, like, what is the story there? Now, they could very well lose in the playoffs, make no mistake. But I think that's what the problem is with baseball. And I think that it is really important to mention that it is not just the Dodgers. It is almost, the Dodgers are a byproduct of the league's incompetence, indifference, and greed, I think. That's how I view it. But that also doesn't mean you aren't allowed to hate the Dodgers, because as many people will point out, they're like, well, you should be complaining about your team not spending. And I'm like, agreed. And as someone who just talked about Moneyball in the last episode, I do think that movie, like, that thinking has been a little bit toxic. But I don't think that like fan bases aren't always. I think two things can be true. I don't think it's mutually exclusive. I think that fan bases are like, I hate the Dodgers because I know that they're profiting or doing well because of how the rest of the league works. I don't think Mariners fans are like, love this right now. I think they're like, I hate the Dodgers and also I hate my owner. I think you could do both. I think that's like the preliminary thing about this. And I also want to talk about just the Roki decision itself, because this is a part where I also think is a little bit more complicated as well. And I also want to talk about whether or not there's any point watching the league, which I know is something people's kind of assertion as well from this. So we're going to do that. A little bit of a rambling episode. What can I say? There's a lot of things to talk about. I think that this topic is so I think the topic is interesting. I don't think that the Dodgers being good is interesting, if that makes sense. I do think that there's so many layers to this, including the big one, which is why am I even going to watch next year if the Dodgers are just going to win? I think that's really important. So we will talk about that in just a second, guys. But first, I must take a second to read from our first sponsor of the day, and that is our good friends over at Rocket Money. We very much like Rocket Money, everybody. We've said this many times. They're great. They're fantastic. And you know why they're fantastic? Because throughout the years, let me tell you, you know what's really annoying? When you have all these different subscription fees and all these different things that you don't even remember. You always forget about them. You don't even know if you're paying for stuff twice. That definitely happened to me before, and I had a few subscriptions that didn't even show up in my brain. I didn't remember them. I didn't realize I was still paying for them, and Rocket Money makes it easy to track them. It is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in uno place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals, your financial goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. Let me tell you, it's really great. Hey, I was subscribed to like a DC Comics thing. I'm a Marvel boy, as you guys know. I still like DC, but I didn't realize that, and etc. There's all different subscriptions you guys have, and you might just completely forget about it. So cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. You heard it. Blast off, everybody. Go check it out. And just like that, everybody, we are back to the rambling, very sad cope, maybe safe space for Padres fans episode of the Locked On Padres podcast, guys. Everybody go check out me on Twitter, again, /X, and Blue Sky at Javipeno, JAVIIPENO. For what it's worth, we're in the second part of this podcast, but I forgot to mention before, I'm not going to be checking the comments of this episode immediately, so please tweet at me instead if you want to hear some of my thoughts on stuff, only because, again, I'm used to when big Dodger signings happen like this, just a flood of trolls entering my comment section. That's usually just what happens. And I know that happens a lot because one time I defended the Dodgers and they still attacked me anyway. So whatever. Let's continue. Here's the second point that I think is really important to talk about, which is this idea that the Dodgers have this outsized advantage over the league. And I think that it's a little true and a little bit not. I think it depends on what we're talking about here, right? So in terms of what makes it true, can everyone replicate what the Dodgers are doing? There's two answers to that. Number one, no, in the literal sense, right? They cannot sign Shohei and this guy and this guy and this guy and this guy and this guy, right? They can't do everything. That's just the reality, because the Dodgers have more money than everybody else. And frankly, just based on their TV deal alone, they have a huge advantage, right? Like they have like a $355 million TV deal as opposed to, say, Cleveland, which is about like 50 million, whatever, something like that. Of course, though, that's only the TV deal, but I'm just saying, no, other teams cannot do to the degree what they're doing. And also that goes for the Yankees, that goes for the Mets, that goes for when they are trying, I guess, sometimes, the Red Sox, right? No, teams cannot compete in the same level that the Dodgers can. However, can everyone replicate what the Dodgers are doing? To a degree, yes. To a degree, yes. If we're talking in the sense of just signing players and making movements to just be better, that absolutely can be done, right? You can't match the amount, but you can still get the impact. Anyone can sign Tyler O'Neill. There's a chance that next year Tyler O'Neill's like a 4.5 value player, and he's better than Teoscar Hernandez. I'm just giving you an example, right? Like, there are players that a lot of teams could sign. I don't think every team could sign Juan Soto. That's why I say it's not true. I don't think every team could sign Shohei Ohtani. That's why I'm saying it isn't true that the Dodgers are just, no, they're just playing by the rules, man. That's not true. And also, just a quick thing. I hate this whole, like, we're just playing by the rules thing, so you're not allowed to hate us. It's like, oh, so I'm not allowed to hate rich people because the tax code is written a certain way? It's like, who do you... Okay. That's that you know what I mean? You can hate both. That's actually allowed. The other thing about this, in terms of why the Dodgers don't have the super biggest advantage and why I disagree with everyone saying it's over, is because I've talked a lot on this show. As long as you're in the top half of payroll, that's what the statistic that I like using shows, you can win the World Series top half. There's only been 3 outside the top half. I didn't say you have to be top 5 or even top 15 in some cases. It's top 10, around that stuff. Like, you just don't have to be outside of that range. That usually says, so i.e., Cleveland and Milwaukee. Yes, people should be more mad, or at least, and I again, like I said in the first segment, I still think their fans are mad. I don't want to act like they blindly just hate Dodgers only and there's no nuance there. But those teams have been really good, and if they just spent like another $50 million a year, like maybe they could go get someone. Maybe they can do what it takes to win. Because when I see that you're 20th or 22nd in payroll, I'm like, history says you're not going to win. You need stars. You need to spend. Like, that's just where I'm at. And also, we have not had a repeat winner of the World Series since 1999. Right? I'm pretty sure it was the Yankees that last did that. Which is why for years, until now, I can't make the joke anymore, that I always didn't understand why Dodgers fans would act like they run the league. You know what I mean? I was like, you don't. Like, the Yankees were much better at this. And frankly, so were the Astros to a degree. But can't say that anymore. They won 2. And especially another one this past season. But I will say, it's just not as interesting of a story. But I will say this note that people are saying that no one can replicate this, I just don't. I don't agree with that. I just don't think that's true. I'm not saying everyone gets Soto. I'm saying that a lot of teams could do, say, to a degree, what the Padres were doing, right? Absolutely what the Padres were doing. I just think that, Tom Ricketts this weekend, Cubs owner, was like, we barely make even. And I'm like, first of all, guys, not to get political, but just don't listen to rich people only, please. And next second, it's like they made $500 million in revenue last year. They absolutely could spend. There's Chicago, too. You try to tell me that a Chicago market isn't like a lucrative market to be in? If that were true, you would have sold the damn team by now. You know what I mean? So I don't really, and sold it for less. I don't know, but I just don't believe in that. So that's my thing, just to defend the Dodgers for a little bit. I think that what really has been annoying for me, though, is, like I said, you're allowed to hate both. The kind of pompous attitude, the arrogance, I think, by the Dodgers fans who are certain to flood my comments, is that it's just obnoxious beyond belief. And you're flexing constantly in the face of other teams, and you're acting like they're just jealous. When 29 other teams, maybe 27 if you want to take out the Yankees, the other, Yankees, Mets, who also have a lot of money and whatnot at their disposal, just shirking that off as they jealous. I think one of my things in life is when a lot of people hate you, when there's a lot of hatred towards a person or you or whatever, and you shrug it off by just assuming it's only because they're jealous, I think that's a very fraught way of thinking. And I think that everybody who's mad, it's like the Dodgers fans are flexing about this on other teams, and it's like Iron Man bragging that he's wealthier than Spider-Man, right? When all the Dodgers fans get in my comments, it's like, congrats? Well, Javi, you didn't complain when the Padres spent a lot of money. I'm like, yeah. I think it's actually cooler when team that never won tries to win versus team that's always been great is great. You know what I mean? I don't know. Hey, Javi, why is it that when the Bengals were trying to make a Super Bowl comeback, you were rooting for them, but when the Patriots made a comeback, it was, no, you don't like that. It's like, well, because Patriots are awful and we hate them. They've won 6 Super Bowls. You know what I mean? So that's kind of how I view it. I just don't like this idea that because of the way that the game is working and because of the owners that you're not allowed to hate the Dodgers. Because Daniel Plainview accruing all that wealth, right? Well, hey, he didn't do anything, technically illegal, so you got to give it to him. No, you do not under any circumstance have to give it to him, right? So that's kind of how I feel about that. Last thing I want to talk about, though, is a little bit of a question that I got, which was about Roki and just this whole idea of this is the only part of the weekend I'm going to put on my tinfoil hat where it's was this a fair negotiation? Because Jim Bowden reported of MLB Network, I think, that was like some teams are asking like MLB to investigate for tampering. Here's how I feel about that. I didn't want to share on the show, but here's how I'll start. First, I want to read a friend of mine, Adam Weinrub, who's a good follow on Twitter. He does stuff for Fansided Editorial. He said, "Why are we acting like, one, every team can replicate what the Dodgers do? In parentheses, they can't. They are owned by a cabal of billionaires." And again, that's just to relitigate what I just said. They can't replicate what the Dodgers do in the literal vacuum sense of everyone can get Ohtani. But I do think every team could just spend and get solid players like we saw them spend on Tanner Scott. I don't think $20 million a year for 4 years is something that other teams can't do, right? I absolutely think that the Cubs could do that. Tom Ricketts is BSing you, right? That's total ridiculousness, right? But I also think like, yeah, but they also do have like a crazy advantage on the league. Both things can be true, more so that other teams don't spend, but a little bit, yes, that the Dodgers do have an advantage. Next point he makes is Roki Sasaki chose LA just because of their infrastructure and training methods. And then he's like, he didn't, in parentheses, he pulled the 2012 Miami Heat with his friends. The Dodgers should be doing exactly what they're doing, and the rest of MLB's owners should be at least trying to match them, but we do not have to lie. John Morosi implied this morning, this being the 17th, though, when the Roki signing came out, that Sasaki and Yamamoto really connected over the past 24 hours, and I have a follow-up question. Do you think I am an idiot? This has been an interesting idea of tampering. I will say this, I think that if the Dodgers tampered, which... whatever. I mean, there's some leagues like the NBA has tampering go all the time. And frankly, I think the Padres probably did some sort of tampering too. Literally, AJ Preller name dropped him at the Peter Seidler Remembrance ceremony, right? Like, so I'm not saying that the Padres didn't or the Dodgers did. I will, though, admit that this whole thing felt like a little bit of theater in some ways. I'm going to put on my tinfoil hat if it's true for a second. I think it's possible that Roki decided this months ago. I think that I am willing to accept that, even from the people that I'm pushing it back against on this episode. Number one, I didn't want to share, and there's a bunch of reasons for this. Number one, I didn't want to share this on the show, but I did have a Padres source, works with the team, he's part of the organization, that was a little bit like, I think this could happen, you know what I mean? Also, why did he visit the White Sox? Or give them a call, Roki, I mean. Not only that, what's it called? You had the Padres, how do I get into this? This whole idea that the Padres are being strung along just to mess with them in international free agent market, that speaks to, by the way, my Iron Man joke. Like, I don't understand why Dodgers fans are flexing that they have more money and resources than the Padres. It just looks weak. But I think that my thing is that I heard he was close to the Padres. Someone else told me that they heard that it was close, that he was going to the Padres. Weird that MLB did an investigation and says no tampering after like a day and a half. That's just weird. John Heyman of MLB Network, tweeted that the Blue Jays have a real shot, and then 10 minutes later the news dropped that he went to the Dodgers. Also, like I said, why did the White Sox get a call? That's weird, right? Multiple people from Nightingale to my own source saying Padres was likely. And then, like, also on top of that, you have the whole, as Adam pointed out, like, Roki and him really connected over the last 24 hours. For what it's worth, again, I don't really care if there was, like, giant tampering, but I think that one of the reasons we're seeing a lot of rage towards this one, as opposed to Snell, I think people are like, this is really dumb. Why did you pretend that everybody had a chance? I think that is an opinion that is not without merit, because all those things of me hearing that the Padres are close, then Blue Jays hearing that they're close, and then all of a sudden he signs there. Why were so many people getting input from other places that said he was really close and then he wasn't? By the way, fun fact, I saw Jeremiah Estrada unfollowed Roki Sasaki on Instagram, which I thought was hilarious. We love you, Estrada. You're the homie. So I just thought that was weird. And then the White Sox part is like, all of this connects a little bit to being like, let's put out the idea that he didn't have a wink-wink agreement with the Dodgers months ago. And I don't think that's necessarily cheating. Again, the NBA does this like all the time. I'm not like that upset about it. I'm more upset about media and the assertion that, as Adam mentioned, that it's just a culture thing only. It's like, I think it's that too, but I also think it's what he said. It's like he wants to play with Yamamoto and Ohtani. I think that that's what it was. I really do. And this idea that I keep hearing multiple people, like trusted sources, Heyman posting what he did about the Blue Jays, and the White Sox part, it feels like this was a little bit of theater to hide the fact that he probably decided months ago, and we had to pretend because people would get really upset if it was already a lock that a guy who isn't money related, or money won't be the burying factor, like it won't be the big barrier for his signing, that he's still going to go to the same team. I think that's what it was, or at least it could have been. I just think that a belief that there could have been a wink wink deal and that there wasn't actually a contest about this, I think it's possible. But anyway, that's it for my thoughts, guys. We're going to continue talking about this, though. We're going to continue ranting and whatnot about those jerk pod Dodgers fans in just a second, guys, in the mailbag segment. But first, I must take just a second to talk to you guys about our second sponsor of the show, and that is the always legendary FanDuel. We love FanDuel very, very much because from the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. So if you want to put a money and say, you know what? The satanic dark magic of the Chiefs, it's ending. Personally, I do think it's ending this Sunday or Saturday, whichever day the Bills game is. Then you could do that. You could do that, and you can get your $300 buckaroos. If you want to go over on Amari Cooper randomly deciding to actually catch passes again for the Bills, you could do that. James Cook, I don't know. I'm feeling like the evil empire gets stopped this year. I really, really am. And if not, then maybe life is pointless. But go check that out, guys, at FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That is FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And just like that, everybody, we are back here. A little bit of a weird transition there on Locked On Padres. Feel free to check me out on Twitter/X and Blue Sky at Javipeno, JAVIIPENO. I'd love to hear from y'all. And I'm sure I will, especially after this today's episode. And it's going to be a lot of fun. So let's get into it, though. Mailbag time to continue talking about this. And again, we're going to talk about, I'm going to be doing a crossover with Miller Thomas, Locked On D-backs. We will be talking more about this, and we will be talking about the impact of the Padres and whatnot. But today just felt like a day where we all need to cope a little bit. You know what I'm saying? But let's get into some of the questions. From Zachary Sheldon at Javipeno, a lot of people are saying that what the Dodgers are doing is actually good for baseball because you have a villain to root against. You have a team to overcome. That's not something we want. We want every team to have a chance just to be the top team, not just LA/New York. First of all, I like that you also put New York too, because I also would have been not as enraged because they haven't done it nearly as much lately, but it also would have been boring if you went to the Yankees. Roki, I mean. This is where, like I said, this is where I think there's a lot of different angles to what's going on with the league right now. My theory has recently been that the villain thing is good, but not for a long time. I think that you saw in the NBA, or especially the NFL, that there was a juice and excitement to being like, let's hope they freaking beat the Patriots. You know what I mean? Now, different sports, different context. I think the NBA, it only lasted for a little bit though, right? But again, as I mentioned, there hasn't been a repeat champion since 99. It's not like it's a guarantee they win the World Series. I think the problem, though, is it's not fun for other fan bases being told, basically, every offseason that they don't matter. And that's not the fault of the fan base. It's the fault of ownership as a big thing. But, yeah, it just stinks. It's not fun to be like, this sport would be so much more exciting if you knew teams that were competitive would actually go out and get guys that are good and could actually help them win a World Series, right? As much as we praise these teams that have their little Cinderella runs, like they don't win the World Series though. Like the Guardians haven't won it, the Rays haven't won it, the Brewers haven't won it. The Brewers last were in a World Series in '83, guys. They were an American League team. That's how long ago it was since the Brewers made it. So I don't care if they win 90 plus games this year. They don't spend. So I think it's a little bit of everything. But yeah, it's not fun as a baseball fan in terms of just fun storylines when the Dodgers just get everybody. I do agree with that. Dylan Short, my friend, old host of Locked On Braves, replied to some of my tweets. He was like, but it's great for the game, Javi. Just like everyone knows, the best time to be an NBA fan was when you knew every year before the season started it would be Golden State versus LeBron in the finals, or in college football when you knew Bama was going to play for the Natty every single year. I do agree with a good portion of that. Again, not a guarantee they're in the World Series or that they're winning, but I think this argument of good for the sport, I think it goes beyond just who wins. I think it's about just making it that the whole league feels like every team has something exciting for each respective city and fan base. I think it's more than just winning for this, and I think that's why it's a problem. But I could be wrong. Dodger fans will sure to be let me know. Also, Zachary Shelton, he says there has to be a limit put on the Dodgers for how many people they can sign every year. I feel like what Ohtani did when deferring his payments was kind of a loophole, which allowed them to sign all the big names. I don't think there has to necessarily be a limit. I think maybe you could say that there should be a salary floor. I think that I'm more of a big fan of. Salary cap, Players Union is never going to go for that, and I also don't know if that fixes the problem fully, because again, guys, the Orioles are spending like what, $70 million right now. But again, it's not a good sign that a league, the NBA and the NFL, do not have one team, the number one team, spending $375 and the last place team spending $70. That's just not a thing, and that is a problem. And also the deferring, that gets complicated. The deferring payments, they certainly can do it more than other teams do, but there are other players that are getting deferred payments, is my issue with this. It is complicated. I'm not saying it's a total thing that isn't totally reasonable. I just think that with the Dodgers, I think the phase 4 is the TV deal. A lot of the money they have makes it a lot easier for them to do the deferred payments, but I think that for some of those lower tier, solid, really good free agents like your Jack Flaherty's, teams that are poor allegedly should be able to maybe, figure that out and just finagle their way around. And I think that there are other players from Corbin Burns to Francisco Lindor and others that also get some deferred payments too. So I think it's complicated, but again, I don't know, it's weird. But it's not just that. I think the deferred payments gets brought up a little bit too much. What else we got here? As a Dodgers fan commenting on a San Diego page, all I have to say is for all the momentum you guys had going, the talent y'all had, one game away from beating the Dodgers and possibly winning the World Series, all I have to say is I absolutely love what's going on with your ownership. Y'all are a poverty franchise, never to be taken seriously. Y'all as big as y'all trophy case. I hate San Diego. I pray and hope that the downfall of y'all trashy organization continues to fall. Go blue. F the Padres forever. Laugh emoji. By the way, Tatis is forever tainted with a steroids allegation. First of all, funniest part about this is as a Dodgers fan. Like, I wouldn't be able to glean that by your comment. And wow, rooting for... So I like that you're kind of admitting that the ownership is a big part of why the Padres are struggling. Okay, fine. And I just say that, look, it stunk. It stunk. I will say that the Padres almost beating the Dodgers last year is a little bit like what happened with the Warriors, where let's also remember the Padres almost beat the Dodgers last year, but it is also true that they had a lot of injuries, which, could create an issue. All I know is it's not going to be interesting when if the Dodgers win the World Series. No one's going to be like, wow, what a great story. They're just going to be like, yeah, they spent $1.5 billion and this league is really broken right now and teams don't spend and we have bad owners. So they do well off of that, Last thing, I don't think Tatis is tainted with the steroid stuff that much. I think it might come up in if he has a great career overall, maybe it does, right? For Hall of Fame voting. But overall, I'm like, dude, what are you talking about? Everybody was losing their mind watching him in the playoffs last season. I don't think anyone cares. And frankly, it looks like it was a PED to he really wants to get back quickly. I don't know. Now, if it happens again, we got some issues, you know what I'm saying? But for now, no, I think people are like, yo, this kid rocks. You know what I mean? I think that's what most people think. Ron Murdy says, comments on the YouTube channel saying losing Roki Sasaki to the Dodgers shows that there is a glaring need for a salary cap in MLB similar to the NFL and NBA. There needs to be a way to level the playing field with the Dodgers, and the current system won't work in the long term. I doubt the MLBPA will go for this, but changes are needed. This could be a topic for an entire show or crossover episode. Yeah, we've been talking about this with Millard. He has a little bit of a counter argument to everything going on too, so that should be fun. But I don't know if it's salary cap. I do think though, you see, guys, why everybody likes the other sports is because it's not like it's for lack of trying. You know what I mean? The other sports is they're just incompetent. This is a big reason Dodgers do well is because everybody else doesn't want to even get to the poker table. You know what I mean? It's like, congrats, you have 2 other teams there. It's easy to win the World Series of Poker when there's only 3 other people you have to beat. I think is the way, a little bit of an analogy of how I go with this. And again, that Dodgers fan before is like, this is why we don't like y'all. You're obnoxious, especially online. Like, congrats, Iron Man. I have more money than you, Peter Parker. Feel bad about it. It's a little bit lame. Moving on, though, just to change up the topic a little bit, Jason G. Smith says, I would hope the Padres don't relocate out of San Diego. The Chargers, Clippers, and Rockets have already relocated out of San Diego. I can't see San Diego being without an MLB team. Petco Park is one of the best MLB stadiums. I will say that for now, it scared me, don't get me wrong, and based on what we've just seen from Matt and Rob, like Seidler, like it does, I don't know if it's very hard, how do I put this? It lines up as of what we know right now that all of a sudden after Peter passed RIP that they just stop and they're cutting payroll. Like it's just not a good sign. But also remember that's alleged and we don't know that for sure. Part of the Shield Seidler lawsuit that there is a relocation plan. We don't know that for sure. And it's a lot. At Edo Marpez 1840 says, "Hey, Mr. Reyes," which thank you for calling me that. I really appreciate that. I just want to tell you that it really, really sucks this is happening with your team. Baseball doesn't need this. I just hope the Padres are able to sort things out without being that Padres. The Padres of old. The rivalry that was growing was great for the sport. I agree. I think it was a lot of fun. But hey, we'll see. We shall see. Dylan Short, again, replied to me saying, "It's just too bad your team doesn't care about winning. Not like y'all basically went bankrupt doing what every national talking head in the sports that everyone can do." I do think Padres fans should be irked by that. Two things. I will say that I don't think it was every national writer, right? But I do think that you do see a little bit of a bias sometimes, right? I think that what's it called? I think that you've seen a few writers, not all of them, not all the time. I actually do remember some good notes. Believe it or not, even from Ken Rosenthal, I think did tweet like, "Hey, this is cool," but there's not nearly the volume, the banging of the drum of how this is good for the game when the Padres did it versus when the Dodgers did it. All the time you get all these sports writers coming out and making excuses, and I think that for the Padres, there were some, I'm not going to say there was zero national writers talking about this, but it does feel significantly less when the Padres go out. And instead, I was inundated more so with stories about, is this sustainable when the Padres are doing it? And don't get me wrong, they did go a little bit over their edge. And again, you don't have to go over the edge in order to win. Top half of payroll is the key. But I will say, did not see nearly as many people praising the Padres for what they did. And then when the Dodgers do it, you get those dumb tweets, like the Buster Olney tweet, who like forced Jackie Robinson into the tweet. A rich history from the Jackie Robinson days. It's like, so did you just do that to make everybody feel bad? Like, did you include Jackie's name in there just so people will feel bad about criticizing the Dodgers? Because that's extremely lame. And I don't see people doing that with the Padres. And yeah, look, there's questions with when the Padres did it. And I just think there is a little bit of a bias. I really do. I do think there's a bit of a bias, and it's annoying. And as Dylan pointed out, we literally went bankrupt trying to do what the Dodgers did. But I also think a part of that is we got to figure out what's going on with the lawsuit. Is it that Rob and Matt are just trying to sell the assets lower to themselves? Are they being like what every other owner is, and that's why this is happening? Or is it that they genuinely went bankrupt? And if that's the case, is it that they just tried to replicate what the Dodgers did and they showcased, no, they can't do it? Or was it that they did spend, but they did a little bit too much, and maybe you didn't have to do that much? I don't know. And because you didn't have to do that much, maybe like you just have to remember you don't have to be top 5 in spending necessarily. You just have to be in range, and the top half is my stat, right? So I don't know, but overall, I still appreciate the reply, Dylan, because it is true that the Padres are in rough shape right now. It's not looking great. But speaking of, by the way, the lawsuit, Shield could have waited until Roki Sasaki decision to sue, says Zemi Tram 1779. I think, as I discussed in the second segment, that Roki already made his decision. That was my vibe when she dropped it too. I just don't think that you would do that. And again, for all of my conspiracy tinfoil hat with the John Heyman thing with the Blue Jays, with my own personal attachments, with why are you calling the White Sox, all that stuff, I think that it's possible that this was 95% Dodgers and 5% Padres the whole time. And that there was a little bit of a facade put up to hide the fact that he basically was like, yeah, I want to be a Dodger like 5 months ago. In order to make it fully legal, they had to, wait for it. That's just me. Because my thing is like, if he left early for competitive reasons, he should not be taking a single call with the White Sox. So that feels a little bit like you're putting on a show. At least that's just me. I could be dead wrong though. Next up though, let's see what we got here. Oh yeah, from the Moneyball episode. You guys seem to like that one a lot. Simple Solution, signed Brad Pitt. Totally agree. Says Sammy Boy Smith. And also someone said he's like 50, but looks like he could go in and play second base, but was very convincing in the movie. Agreed. Silas Robert Shaw also comments saying Moneyball is BS at least the fan fantasy of it. You don't win with just the analytics crap from the movie. It's about having a quality farm system, using analytics, and spending some money. Agreed. The only Moneyball team to win was the Red Sox, but they were also top 2 or 1 in payroll when they finally won. As much as I hate them, the Dodgers do it right. Perennial playoff team, perennial top 10 farm system. Yes, truckloads of money, but the organization is run well, and the farm is top notch. That's the goal to me. If the Padres are at 70 or 80% of the Dodgers spending and do the other 2 parts, they will be in the playoffs and have chances to win the World Series. Also, just think if the A's spent money consistently when Zito and the gang were there and kept them together. Absolutely agreed on the last point. Doesn't get talked about in that movie that they had an amazing pitching staff and they could have kept them. Yeah, and that's kind of what I was saying. I do think that money has a big part with maybe why they have a great farm system too, in the sense that you can hire and have the best training facilities. But it's also true, again, top half of payroll. You don't have to be number 1. You just got to be able to go out and spend some. So I agree. The Moneyball thing is what I like about Moneyball, and what I also talk about in the article is you can view it as a movie that's defending rich people and how it's about spending less for labor is good. And you can also appreciate the movie for also being about the beauty of innovation, you know what I mean? And the beauty of people trying to do new things. Oh, he throws funny. Don't care. We like him. All that sort of stuff. So it's about both things. But that's just me. David Lamper at Gen Zod's Army on Twitter asks, can we get a Profar watch? Hard to tell what's real out there. Yeah, we haven't heard anything about that guy, and it's weird. There's a couple free agents we haven't heard like anything on, at least for the longest time. Profar's number 1. I haven't heard anything about Jerickson Profar. Maybe they can get him on a short deal. Ha-Seong Kim, another one, former Padre. Haven't heard anything about him, and it's because reportedly he might be injured, not be ready for opening day. So maybe the Padres can get him back for nothing. I don't know. We'll see. David Lamper also says, are the Padres a playoff contender right now? If so, why? Absolutely, they're still a playoff contender. I just think that, and we're going to talk about this more with the podcast with Millard, either tomorrow or Thursday or Friday, whichever day. I still think they can be a great team. I'm just worried about this ownership thing and just how much that might be hamstringing them in terms of spending anything. Very, very hard to see. There's certainly a playoff contender, though. I mean, they were very good last year, so I could see them doing it again. And even if some players regress, Tatis is such a nuclear missile that it's possible he's like a 7-win player and in a Juan Soto-like fashion and just carries the offense. And then you have some other people contributing too. And Merrill could get even better. Another one from David Lamper at General Zod's Army, who loves commenting on my Twitter, which you guys should do more of, again, at Javipeno, Javiipeno, Twitter/X or Blue Sky. Keep King and Cease, Darvish, Musgrove IR, get Flaherty if he is still available, let Niebo cook with Brito and Waldron, bring back Profar and add a high upside solid defender to the outfield, sign defensive catcher with an okay bat, and platoon Campy with whoever. I think Tirso Ornelas is actually what they might be thinking. And I'm just curious to see how the market's shaping out for Profar, because if they're able to get him for less, I wouldn't mind that. I wouldn't hate it if you did some kind of option deal, but we'll have to see. And I don't know if they have enough space for other outfielders and stuff, but we'll see. My guy, Blue Goon 82, who I love his profile picture on Twitter. It's like a sentient baseball with a bat and a glove. Here's what I tweeted. I said, I think it's the pompous nature of Dodger fans that gets me. Perhaps they take a hint that everyone hating you might not just be a they jealous thing, but alas, puffing your chests out not to convince us, but more yourselves, that profiting off of a broken league is interesting. He says, a broken league? This coming from a Padre fan who championed all their spending and trade acquisitions is really something. As I mentioned before, yes, I think it's different when team that was always bad and historically bad decides to be good versus team that's always been good and historically good keeps spending. I think it's different. There's a reason why you don't go on Locked On Dodgers anymore. At Snydog, Jeff Snyder, friend of the show and host of Locked On Dodgers, co-host with Vincent Piro, counters every single one of your gripes with so much ease and effectiveness. Very glad that you're finding a way to cope with losing both Roki and Terrence Scott, especially after AJ name dropped Roki. Can't believe that was what you were hanging your hat on, name dropping. So let's end this. Name dropping wasn't the only thing that I mentioned as my pitch for why I think they could sign Roki Sasaki. Right. Also brought up Yu Darvish. I brought up the way that they treated. I brought up the agent comments, and also when I was talking about the chances that Roki signed with the Padres, I did it in a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek, like tinfoil hat. I'm trying, you know what I mean, to hope that he comes to the Padres, because I always did think he was going to the Dodgers for what it's worth. So again, that's not what I hung my hat on. So you're misrepresenting my argument. And secondly, Snyder doesn't counter every single thing I say. We go at each other like all the time. That's just kind of what we do for the show. And also, no, I'm not. You're alluding to like I'm being afraid to go on Locked On Dodgers. It's not that. I also haven't been on Locked On Rockies and Locked On Giants in a while. I just talk with Millard a lot. What do you want from me? Which reminds me, I do have to do a podcast though with Jeff. We're probably going to do one at some point, for sure. Just hash it out. You know what I mean? Let's do a WWE style thing. That should be fun, right? I won't get any crap for that. That should be a lot of fun. And also, I know Ben's been a little bit sick, and Paul just haven't had a lot of Rocky stuff to talk about lately. But we will be doing that. Not afraid of Jeff. It's a friend. What can I say? That'll be a lot of fun. Last two comments. Someone commented on a short saying, bring back Austin Nola. You are a lunatic and should be locked up in Arkham Asylum for that. And then last thing, someone just mentioned like they want to bring back the navy and orange jerseys for the Padres. I'd like that too, man. I'd like that too. That would be really fun. I wouldn't mind like a little throwback to the San Diego Chicken days, you know? So I would really like that. So I agree with you, sir. That last comment, by the way, I just deleted it from my thing. I'm going to try and find it. But look, I think that it is a really, really rough time. I hope that I was somewhat coherent in my rambling today, because I really do think there's a lot of aspects of this where I do think it's not good for the sport, but I don't think it's innately just a Dodgers problem. But also they do have an advantage, but also this and that and this and that. So look, I think that people have already written their hate comments. I think people are already saying stuff below. I get it. But also, I really do think that it's not good. It's not fun. I still think the Padres could have a good season. But you know what? This is the state of the league right now. And it stinks. And it stinks. And it's just a lot to talk about. That's why we had such a long episode. But whatever. Let it rip. Going to be doing a lot of fun shows, though, over the next few weeks for sure, until we go back to 3 days, or for the full 5 days a week. But for now, we're just 3. And yeah, we're going to talk a little bit more about the Padres going forward for sure on future episodes and how this affects them. It's a brutal blow. It's brutal. And I stand by everything that I posted on my Twitter account and everything I said today for the most part. I feel like I kind of got out all my feelings. It stinks, guys, but you know what? You never give up hope. As I saw one time, I'm going to leave you guys with a really positive thing. And you can use this for any aspect of life. I like this tweet that I saw a while ago. People speak of hope as if it is this delicate, ephemeral thing made of whispers and spider's web. It's not. Hope has dirt on her face, blood on her knuckles, the grit of the cobblestones in her hair, and just spat out a tooth as she rises for another go. No one said it would be easy, guys. And you know what? Maybe it shouldn't be all the time. Maybe it shouldn't be. Because can you imagine if the Padres somehow beat them in the playoffs this year? Could you imagine? You know what I'm saying? That'd be pretty wild, man. But hopefully you guys enjoyed the episode. Can't wait to see you guys next time. Chunky edition of the show. Hopefully you guys had a nice extended weekend as well. And until next time, stay safe. And of course, stay faithful. My Friar Faithful homies. Take care.